Revealed. Black CEO's seat stolen. Grounding flight for 200. An incredible twist of fate unfolds. Marcus Jenkins felt the rush of adrenaline coursing through him as he navigated the crowded terminal, his heart pounding with anticipation. Today was pivotal. His tech startup, a company born from sweat and sleepless nights, stood on the precipice of recognition on the global stage. He had sacrificed everything for this moment. His family had poured their savings and dreams into his vision. A first-class seat, the gleaming reward for years of hard work, beckoned to him like an oasis. Yet just as he approached the gate, he was stopped cold by an all-too-familiar figure. There, smug and casual, was Thomas Ashford, an executive renowned for his cutthroat methods. A wave of anger surged through Marcus as he watched Ashford effortlessly claim his reserved seat. Heat flooded his cheeks. It felt as if the world had conspired against him again, like so many times before when opportunity had been snatched away merely because of the color of his skin. He paused, heart racing, grappling with a suffocating mix of disbelief and fury. "Excuse me, that's my seat," Marcus said, his voice lifting above the airport din. The words tasted bitter. How often had he been forced to assert his rightful place? Ashford smirked. "Sorry, but I just got upgraded." "Tough luck," he sneered, his arrogance an affront. Incensed, Marcus took a step forward, the weight of his years of toil closing in. Around him, the bustling crowd began to notice, eyes shifting towards the escalating confrontation. It was pressure, the kind that threatened to suffocate. A deep-seated fear gripped his gut. Would he be the man who stood up against this injustice today? Or would he walk away, burdened by another lost opportunity? What would happen if he revealed the truth, if he put his dignity on the line? He swallowed hard. Before the airline staff intervened, every second stretched painfully long. The tension in the air crackled, igniting voices from passengers who began to chime in, sharing their own frustrations about being overlooked and undervalued. This moment was no longer just about a seat. It was a spotlight on systemic bias, unearthing decades of silent resentment. He could feel the weight of their collective experiences pressing down on him, an obligation to further their unfinished conversations. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Marcus opened his mouth to speak, but the words stayed lodged in his throat as he lost himself in the murmur of the crowd. He glanced at the passengers, their faces revealing a woven tapestry of support and anticipation. It felt like a tidal wave, dragging him into deeper waters of despair and defiance. Each moment that passed amplified his internal conflict. He needed to reclaim more than just that seat. He needed to confront a toxic narrative, setting the stage for a larger battle against inequality. Then, through the chaos, a familiar face emerged. A woman, stern and kind, stepping out from the shadows of his memory. His mentor and big advocate from his early days in the tech world. Their eyes locked, and just like that, he was reminded of the countless lessons she taught him. To stand tall against adversity, to fight for those who felt invisible. Drawing strength from that connection, Marcus inhaled deeply, preparing to address Ashford, ready to claim his space not just as a CEO, but as a human being worthy of respect. With all eyes on him, he felt every heartbeat in the room, a pulse throbbing with urgency and possibility. Just as he set his mind to confront Ashford, time felt stagnant, the uncertain air thick with explosive tension, leaving everyone on edge about what would happen next. Would he seal his fate as a victim of circumstance or become the agent of his own destiny? The moment hung in the air like a taut wire, vibrating with expectation. Marcus's pulse raced as he squared his shoulders, his mind racing with unfamiliar thoughts. What had he sacrificed for this very moment? A lifetime of hard work and resilience screamed inside him for recognition. Could he truly let this man, this embodiment of privilege, belittle his efforts? Enough, he finally said, voice steady despite the tempest inside. "This isn't just about a seat. It's about respect and acknowledgement of hard work." The crowd's murmuring escalated, a symphony of shared emotions amplifying his courage. Ashford's smirk flickered for just a moment, caught off guard by the shift in narrative. Marcus stepped closer, feeling the energy shift around him. He wasn't just talking to Ashford anymore. He was speaking for all those who had been dismissed. "You think you can take what's not yours just because of your status? I've fought tooth and nail for my place here. We all deserve our just shares." The realization hit him. His voice, once tinged with uncertainty, resonated with authority. He was no longer grappling with internal struggles alone. He was a voice echoing a collective battle. In that moment, the undercurrents of past injustices surged through his veins, fueling him to push back against the systemic forces that had long diminished his worth. The airline staff, who had previously been aloof, stepped forward, eyes darting between the two men. "We need to resolve this," one of them said, glancing at Ashford, who looked less that confident now. Marcus felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps this would not end in defeat. In an unexpected twist, the airline staff called for the manager. The tension danced palpably in the air, and Marcus seized it, his heart racing not just with fear, but with determination. This could be the moment where he could redefine himself amidst adversity and humiliation. Instead of retreating, Marcus took a step back and focused on his breathing. Digging into his reservoir of mental strength, he visualized the boardroom of investors who would watch him as the CEO of his startup. He focused on the countless nights he had stayed awake, mapping out the future of his technology. Each graph, each pitch, each rejection had added an insatiable fuel to his resolve. "Listen," he addressed the gathering crowd again, his voice strong and authoritative. "There's a reason we stand here today. The world needs innovators, dreamers, and those who dare to risk everything for change. I refuse to be a story of defeat. We have to demand that our voices are heard." Words poured out of him, a rallying cry that transcended the confines of the airport. Awakened spirits began to rise within the swarm of passengers, a quiet revolution taking form in the terminal. Ashford's bravado evaporated, replaced by a whirlwind of disbelief and frustration. The crowd began shouting their support, echoing Marcus's sentiments. Could this be the catalyst for something more significant than a mere confrontation over a seat? He felt significant and alive, embodying the very essence of his ambition. As the airline manager arrived, Marcus's heart raced with adrenaline, but it wasn't fear that ruled him now, it was purpose. A decision loomed before him, the kind that could change everything, a moment to test his vision against deep-seated power structures. Would he continue to fight for not just his seat, but a place in a world that often denied his existence? And in striving for that, would the truth of hidden resilience and a new path become clear? The next decision would determine everything. Still, a sliver of doubt flickered at the edges of his mind. Was he truly ready for the transformation he sought? The question loomed just as large as the moment he now stood in, setting the stage for the evolution he had to embrace. Would he seize the moment, or would he hold back when it mattered most? As the airline manager appeared, a hefty figure with an authoritative posture, Marcus felt a wave of pressure wash over him, but it was interlaced with an unyielding determination. This was the moment he had waited for, a test not only of his resolve but of his entire journey. Every late night, every rejection letter, every glance of condescension from those too comfortable in their positions, it all coalesced into this singular confrontation. The manager assessed the scene, eyebrows raised, and Marcus seized the opportunity before the man could utter a single word. "Sir," he began, centering his thoughts, "we need to address not only this conflict, but the larger issue of fairness within your organization." His tone carried the weight of the crowd's anticipation, resonating with each heartbeat. He could see Ashford's smug demeanor faltering as he appreciated the shift in power dynamics. Marcus pressed on. "The hospitality we expect from an airline should extend to every passenger, regardless of their background or status. What happened here today is not just about a seat, it's about how individuals are valued and recognized. Because if we continue to ignore the voices of the deserving, we risk perpetuating a cycle of oppression." The manager nodded slowly, caught by Marcus's earnest resolve. It was a window, opening wider with each word that fell from Marcus's mouth. He could feel the encouragement of the crowd behind him, a palpable force propelling him forward. I ask you, what policies do you have in place to ensure that everyone is treated with dignity in situations like this? Because today, standing in front of you, all I want is respect, for myself and for everyone else who's felt overlooked. With each moment that passed, a transformation unfolded inside Marcus. Fear began to loosen its grip, revealing a clearer vision of who he could be, and he embraced it fully. He was not merely fighting for his rightful place on a flight. He was unearthing the potential within himself to lead, to advocate for others, and to redefine what success looked like, especially in spaces that didn't consider people like him. The manager's gaze was now more focused, a slight furrow forming on his brow. I hear you, he said cautiously, glancing toward Ashford, who, despite his earlier bravado, now shifted uncomfortably under scrutiny. Let's get to the bottom of this situation. Marcus calculated his next move, the stakes elevated beyond his personal dilemma. If handled correctly, this could be more than a win in an airport dispute. It could be his launching point. I want to ensure there's accountability and transparent communication. This isn't just for me. It's for everyone affected by similar injustices. As the manager turned toward Ashford for his side of the story, Marcus's mind raced ahead, crafting his narrative. He envisioned himself standing before an audience at a TED Talk or in a boardroom, commanding respect with the same fervor he had just shown. Each action took him closer to realizing the leadership role he had always desired. But with that vision came an unsettling question. What would it take to make a lasting impact? Actions speak louder than words, he thought, picturing the ripple effect his choices could cause in the future. Would this moment be some passing victory, or would it serve as the bedrock for deeper changes in his industry? As the discussions unfolded before him, the air thick with anticipation and potential change, Marcus felt the weight of his aspirations pressing against him. Would he walk away simply satisfied by acknowledgement, or would he pave the way for genuine transformation? The tension mounted as he realized this was just the beginning. Little did he know, a personal reckoning loomed on the horizon, challenging everything he thought he understood about influence and power. The moment of truth awaited, one that might redefine his place not just in the flight, but in a much larger arena where the stakes had never been higher. Would he rise to meet that challenge, or would doubt once again cloud his judgment? Marcus felt the adrenaline surging through him, a cocktail of fear and exhilaration battling for dominance. The tension in the air thickened, and each passing second felt like an eternity suspended in time. The manager directed Ashford to recount his version of events, and Marcus prepared himself for a torrent of justifications and excuses. Ashford's words dripped with a mix of indignation and rehearsed charm, attempting to frame the incident as a mere misunderstanding. He claimed Marcus was making a mountain out of a molehill, a phrase that ignited a flame of frustration within Marcus. The casual dismissal of something so serious was infuriating. This wasn't trivial, it was a glaring symptom of a much larger issue. No, Marcus thought, this cannot become just another moment for them to gloss over. As the conversation wore on, Marcus decided to pivot away from the immediate incident and instead scope out the bigger picture. Mr. Ashford, he interrupted with a calm intensity, your version may suggest a simple error, but systemic issues are rarely isolated. This isn't just about a seat, it's about how your company handles customer grievances. What processes do you have in place to gather feedback and address concerns from marginalized customers? There was a murmur in the crowd, a shift in their perception as they recognized Marcus not just as a victim but as a challenger, someone who would not back down easily. The manager turned, nodding in agreement with Marcus's line of questioning. An important angle, he noted, noting the energy in the room. We need to ensure our policies reflect our values, especially at a time when inclusivity is essential. The recognition sparked something within Marcus. He was not merely participating in an argument, he was playing a role in shaping corporate culture. With a newfound sense of purpose, he continued, implementing training for your staff on bias and representation isn't merely a suggestion, it's a necessity. A company's brand is its culture, and culture starts from the ground up. If you want to resonate beyond profit margins, you must understand the people who make up your passenger base. As Marcus spoke, he envisioned the impact of his words rippling outward, echoing in boardrooms and discussions long after the airport incident faded into memory. His mind was a whirlwind of ideas and strategies. What if he channeled this energy into shaping an initiative that could influence change? The manager's expression had softened, the initial defensiveness melting into a more contemplative demeanor. "You've raised some good points, Marcus," he said, a hint of respect creeping into his tone. "It's clear that we need to have a wider conversation about our organizational approach." Yet doubt lingered in the recesses of Marcus's mind. Would this be just talk, as so many initiatives had become? He felt a flicker of uncertainty. What kind of follow-through would he demand? Closing the gap between words and action would be his biggest challenge. Ashford, sensing a shift in power, attempted to regain control. "We can certainly discuss improvements, but let's not forget there are protocols." His voice trailed off under Marcus's focused gaze, which drilled into the man's calculated facade. Marcus stood firm, realizing that it wasn't just about this moment. It was about building a foundation of accountability and genuine engagement. "I fully expect that not just apologies will follow, but real initiatives that the public can track. Transparency is key to your credibility moving forward." As the discussion continued, Marcus felt invigorated, but also acutely aware of the precarious line he was walking. The way he navigated these precarious waters could either secure his newfound voice or drown him in the complexities of corporate response. And then, just as he was about to summarize thoughts and push for actionable commitments, he received a critical message on his phone, one that would shatter the tentative progress he'd made. The news erupted with unsettling details about an almost catastrophic decision by the airline's executives, one that could undermine everything he'd worked for. Marcus's heart raced. The real battle was just beginning, and the next move could redefine who he was willing to become in the face of turbulent challenges ahead. What would he do now? Marcus stared at the screen, his breath hitching in his throat. The headline screamed at him, and his mind raced with implications. The Black CEO, an embodiment of progress for an industry not known for its inclusivity, was sidelined over a staffing blunder, and the resulting chaos had sent ripples of outrage across social media platforms. His skin prickled with the recognition that his voice had been swallowed by a much larger narrative, one that could obliterate any gains he had fought to articulate in that conference room. With the weight of the news bearing down on him, he had to act quickly. He felt a surge of disbelief, punctuated by anger. It wasn't just a plot twist. It was a stark reminder of how delicately identities were held in the corporate landscape. One misstep could lead to catastrophe. He pulled himself away from the panic and focused on his options. The situation was explosive, but within chaos lay an opportunity for change. The fallout could either bury the airline further into the ground or lead to a demand for accountability that would push them toward reform. What Marcus lacked in corporate experience, he made up for in conviction. He was conscious that he needed to navigate this minefield shrewdly, and not all would be supportive. Pushback was inevitable. He tapped rapidly on his phone, drafting a message to the manager and key decision-makers within the airline, proposing an emergency meeting to address the implications of the incident. His fingers trembled at the screen, the gravity of his intention almost paralyzing. He grappled with self-doubt. Would they even listen to him? Who was he to dictate the terms of an organization that had neglected accountability in the past? The thoughts pounced at him like feral animals, ordered rage, immature doubt, the inner critic snarling. Yet beneath that tide of insecurity stirred something stronger, a determination to ensure that this moment bore fruit. It was time to redefine his role, not merely as an observer, but as an architect of change. After hitting send, he allowed himself a moment to breathe deeply, feeling the weight of the decision settle in his chest. But the relief was fleeting. The news spread quickly, with external pressures mounting. Competitors seized upon the misstep, utilizing it for their own advantage and leaving the airline vulnerable. Outside perceptions would shift like sand on the beach, and Marcus needed to harness that wave rather than drown in it. His mind shifted to the next steps. He envisioned corporate workshops, transformative dialogues, a multifaceted approach that forged connections beyond initiative checklists. It was now or never. But within that urgency lay a risk that could either elevate or dismantle everything he hoped to achieve. With reinvigorated resolve, Marcus drafted a clear strategy, focusing not only on the immediate needs, but also on positioning himself as a voice for sustainable change. This wasn't just about one person. It was about altering the corporate culture at its roots. He mentally reminded himself of the power in the collective voice of the marginalized, of which he belonged, and strategized how he could amplify that resonance in front of leadership. As the meeting time loomed closer, doubt attempted to seep in once more. Would they hear him? Would they take action? Suddenly, a call came through on his phone, displaying an unfamiliar number. He hesitated, but he picked up, the adrenaline pulsing within him anew. "Marcus, we need to talk. The executives want to discuss how we're going to handle the fallout from—" The voice cut off as if sensing his rising pulse. As the urgency of the situation unfolded, a chilling realization settled within him. This wasn't just a call. It was a demand that would test all he had been building up to this point. Would he remain firm in his intentions or cower in the face of intimidation? Marcus clenched his jaw, determined to embrace the mantle of influence he had just claimed. As he replied, he prepared himself for whatever was to come, knowing he was engaging in a game much bigger than himself. It was time to confront not just the executives, but also the skepticism that circled like vultures, ready to prey on any sign of weakness. The stakes couldn't be clearer. This was not just about a flight. This was about reshaping the narrative for the future. What lay ahead was uncertain, but Marcus was ready to face whatever challenge presented itself, prepared to confront the CEO and force an uncomfortable conversation about accountability. The conference room felt suffocating as Marcus stepped through the door. A large rectangular table sprawled in front of him, surrounded by executives whose expressions obscured their thoughts. He could sense their apprehension swirling in the air, a palpable anxiety mixed with defiance. He had prepared meticulously for this moment, yet the overwhelming presence of authority ignited old fears, ones he had thought he had conquered. As he took a seat, he scanned their faces, looking for any sign of solidarity. Would they see him as an ally in this tumultuous sea of chaos, or merely a cog in their corporate machinery? He could feel the weight of the situation pressing against him, pushing him to choose between compliance and the fierce desire for change. The stakes were higher than he had imagined, and the moment was ripe for action. "Thank you for gathering on such short notice," the CEO finally began, a hint of irritation glimmering behind her polished exterior. "We need to formulate a response to the backlash." The room buzzed with murmurs, and Marcus felt a thrill, a surge of adrenaline coursing through him. He straightened his back, focusing intently. Now wasn't the time to waver. He had wrestled with self-doubt for so long. The time had come to silence it. "If I may," he interjected, his voice steady despite the tremors of uncertainty within. "We need to pivot this moment into an opportunity. Our response should be built on transparency and accountability." A mix of sour glances and raised eyebrows met his declaration. He quickly continued, heart pounding. "The trust of our employees and customers is on the line. We must acknowledge the missteps while laying the groundwork for real change. It's a chance to not only redeem ourselves, but to lead the industry." As he spoke, he felt the energy in the room shift, though not completely in his favor. He could see some executives tensing, their discomfort palpable, while others nodded subtly, contemplating his words. He realized the challenge was not merely delivering a message, but reframing a narrative steeped in a history of negligence. "However, Marcus," a senior vice president interjected, her voice cutting through the air like glass, "your proposal seems idealistic. The board won't favor drastic changes without clear, immediate benefits." He hesitated but sensed heaviness in her skepticism. Instinctively, he engaged with her directly. "It's precisely that short-sighted thinking that has brought us to this crisis. What if we don't act? What if we let this opportunity slip away?" He paused, allowing the tension to build. "We hold the power to redefine our identity, to become a beacon of accountability rather than a footnote in corporate scandals." His heart raced, not entirely sure of the perception his words were eliciting. Would they see him as disruptive or visionary? The skeptical vice president's expression softened, but doubt was still etched in her brow. "You're advocating for slow growth in an emergency. Will that hold up against the competition?" This was a pivotal moment, the kind he had often imagined but never believed he would face. "Real change is not instantaneous," he asserted with conviction. "If we don't transform our culture now by embracing our shortcomings openly, we risk becoming irrelevant." The room was silent, the air thick with unresolved tension. Marcus felt both vulnerable and emboldened, a dichotomy he had never known. Their next response could either solidify or dismantle everything he had fought for. As the meeting continued, he forged ahead with his vision, proposing immediate workshops, open forums, and honest discussions, despite the quiet pushback. He was determined to weave accountability into the corporate fabric, no matter the resistance. At length, the CEO cleared her throat, breaking into his thoughts. "We'll take your suggestions under advisement, Marcus. We'll need further details and a strategic outline by the end of the week to present to the board." As he nodded, feeling a small spark of hope flicker in response, he caught glimpses of approval from some. Perhaps he wasn't entirely alone. Emerging into the hallway, he realized the enormity of this moment still loomed ahead. He had vocalized intentions for progress, yet it was merely a gateway to the deeper battles that awaited. Doubts lingered, the question of whether he truly could influence lasting change, jacketed in layers of uncertainty. Suddenly a thought pierced through the noise. What if his next step wasn't just about this airline, but about challenging the very framework of corporate culture itself? The idea blazed within him, sparking a thrilling urgency. He couldn't waver now. The tide had begun to shift, and the journey toward true reform was just beginning. But lurking in the shadows of possibility was a challenge far beyond this meeting. Would his resolve hold firm against those who had long preferred the status quo? Would he find the strength to stand? The moment to confront not just the executives but the ingrained biases of the industry was fast approaching. And as he took a deep breath, he knew profound changes were on the horizon. Changes that could upend everything he once believed about success. What lay ahead would demand far more of him than he had ever imagined. As Marcus exited the conference room, the murmur of anxious conversations floated through the hallway like a distant echo. The weight of their skepticism bore down on him, and uncertainty twisted in his gut. He had taken the first step towards change, yet now he faced an entirely different battlefield, one where the resistance was as entrenched as it was invisible. He walked briskly, mind racing, replaying the discussion. Could transparency truly shift perceptions? He was wrestling with the age-old corporate dilemma. Should he prioritize quick, tangible outcomes that would quiet dissent, or actively pursue a culture of accountability that could yield long-term benefits? That question gnawed at him, but he resolved to flesh out his ideas. He needed clarity to create a structured outline for the board meeting, and he couldn't afford to stumble under the pressure again. Sitting at his desk, reports and statements strewn everywhere, he had to calm the tempest within. Marcus drafted plans for workshops tailored to encourage open dialogue, pairing frontline employees with executives. He envisioned a series of forums where each voice mattered, suggesting that perhaps it was time to break down hierarchical barriers. His hands moved quickly across the keyboard, driven by a sense of purpose he had seldom felt before. Just as he sank deeper into his work, his phone vibrated on the table, the screen lighting up with a text from his mentor, Thomas. "I heard you made quite an impression today. Remember, change is seldom comfortable. Stay the course." The words struck a chord. Thomas was right. The path ahead would test him in ways he hadn't anticipated, whether that involved pushing against long-standing norms or educating those who resisted. But there was something else gnawing at him. A flicker of self-doubt ignited when he recalled the vice president's skepticism. He questioned if he could truly influence this corporate culture marred by decades of negligence. The notion of challenging ingrained biases made him uneasy. It wasn't merely about proposing solutions, it was about battle lines, fiercely defended beliefs, and the fraught dynamics of power. Could he guide others towards acknowledging their blind spots? Caught in a whirlwind of these thoughts, he found himself lost in a reverie of possibilities. Each scenario a profound transformation not just for the company, but for his own growth. He imagined forging alliances, presenting a united front in the face of opposition, each victory a stepping stone toward resilience. But the specter of an indifferent board loomed, and he felt the chill of rejection ebbing at the edges of his resolve. Determined to find clarity in chaos, he picked up the phone and called his colleague, Linda, who had been subtly supportive during the meeting. She picked up on the first ring, her voice steady. "Marcus, what's up?" "I'm mapping out my proposal for the board," he began, heat rising in his cheeks as he spoke. "I could use your insight. You've always understood the pulse of executive dynamics." "Of course," she replied, her tone sharp. "But you know it'll take more than just a good plan to convince them. They have a vested interest in maintaining the status quo. You'll need to be ready for pushback." Marcus nodded, even though she couldn't see him. Her words echoed Thomas's sentiments, but with a sharper edge. "What do you think is the biggest hurdle for them?" "I think it's fear. Fear of appearing incompetent. Fear of change disrupting profits. You'll need to ease their concerns," she advised. A pang of dread coursed through him. Fear was a force that paralyzed entire organizations when unchecked. "If I lead with transparency and build trust, will that be enough?" he questioned, punctuating his uncertainty. "Transparency is a great start, but you need a strategy that speaks to their self-interests too," she encouraged. "Frame your ideas not just as moral imperatives, but as pivotal to their survival. Make it mutually beneficial." He scribbled notes vigorously, each line a piece of a puzzle he was starting to solve, each moment refining his approach into something more tangible. As he put down the phone, an electrifying notion transmitted through him. Perhaps not only could he weave change into the company, but he could also pull the executives into a vision where reform was not just advantageous, it was essential. In a moment of clarity, he faced his office window, watching the city breathe outside. Tomorrow, he would need to confront the audience of skeptics, invigorated by a new resolve. But a lingering question haunted him. Was he ready to get personally involved in the emotional narratives of the board? To coax them into realizing that transformation could come only with vulnerability? As nighttime enveloped the city, he closed his laptop, ready to rest and recharge. But beneath that calm exterior, he felt the fiery embers of determination fueled by the prospect of both a renewed corporate culture and his journey towards becoming a leader who dared to confront fear head-on. The next day would demand everything from him. He sensed that the moment of truth was fast approaching, where courage would be tested not in words but in an unwavering stance for change. Would he falter in the face of resistance, or would he step up, weaving his narrative into the fabric of the company's evolution? As dawn crept into the city, Marcus felt the weight of his own heartbeat against the silence of his apartment. Each thud echoed his uncertainty, mixing with the thick air of anticipation. He pulled his mind away from the daunting task ahead, attempting to center himself. Meditation had never been his forte, but he sat at the edge of his bed, taking deep breaths, urging his thoughts to slow. Clarity eluded him like a mirage, flickering just out of reach. Arriving at the office, he was greeted by the familiar hum of industry, but today felt different. The atmosphere buzzed with an underlying tension, a palpable sensation of anticipation that seemed to reverberate off the walls. People moved about, their conversations a backdrop to his race against self-doubt. He took a moment near the espresso machine, letting the rich aroma permeate his senses, hoping it would fortify his resolve. The boardroom loomed down the hallway, its polished glass doors reflecting a version of himself that was still unsure. He could feel Linda's earlier words echoing through his mind. Make it mutually beneficial. Could he genuinely weave a narrative that resonated with their fears while inspiring action? Would they see him as an ally or an adversary? The stakes were higher than he'd anticipated. Pooling his thoughts, he arrived early to the boardroom and meticulously arranged his materials. He stacked charts showcasing potential growth against projections for rising employee satisfaction. As he prepared, he recalled the countless hours spent developing this strategy, each line of data a silent testament to his commitment. Yet beneath his calm demeanor lay a surge of anxiety. As the board members amassed, he caught their transient glances, some filled with skepticism, others glimmering with intrigue. The meeting commenced. Marcus felt their eyes on him, tapping into that primal instinct to retreat. Instead, he stood taller and unclasped his notes. "Today, I want to talk about transparency and how it can redefine our culture," he began, forcing his voice to remain steady. He navigated the presentation, adjusting his strategy with every flicker of expression across their faces. When he presented the data, he framed it not as an emotional appeal, but as a rational necessity. What we risk by not addressing these concerns is not just dissent among our employees, but stagnation in our growth. He could see the tide beginning to turn. Lines of tension on their brows softened as he spoke. Yet, it was during the audience's questions that he truly engaged with their fears. One member's voice broke through the tension. "What if we change and it doesn't lead to the expected results?" The question hung heavy in the air, exposing latent insecurities. Marcus paused, inhaling deeply. "What if we don't change? The risk lies not in embracing a fresh approach, but in clinging to outdated practices that serve no one," he answered, feeling his heartbeat synchronize with the rhythm of the room. He had transformed their defense into an opportunity to reflect on their values. As the meeting progressed, he noticed other board members exchanging silent glances, as if they were shifting in their seats metaphorically and literally. Each nod from them felt like a crack in the concrete walls built around their fears. Their bodies, once rigid, began to relax as he crafted a space for dialogue rather than dictation. When the hour drew to a close, Marcus concluded with a compelling vision, a path forward that involved their buy-in, a coalition of sorts. "Our success hinges on collaboration. Let's redefine what our executive culture looks like together." When he finished, the room was electric with a mix of uncertainty and promise. Though he could sense hesitations linger, he felt a collective pull towards something greater. As the board members began to discuss next steps, Marcus knew he had landed a cautionary strike against conventional wisdom. But as he left the room, he was met with a flicker of recognition from the vice president, an unexpected shift in their dynamic. The battle wasn't over yet, and the real challenge would lie in the commitment to sustain this momentum. Outside the boardroom, a message pinged on his phone. "Thomas again. You planted seeds today, but remember, resilience is watered by consistent effort." Marcus couldn't shake off the knot in his stomach. It was entwined with determination. He realized the true test awaited beyond the board's approval, within each conversation he would have with his colleagues in the coming days, weeks, and months. As he gathered his things, an unexpected wave of urgency washed over him. How far could he push this newfound perspective? Would his sincerity endure once resistance began to rise again? Just as he contemplated this, he overheard snippets of a conversation about a sudden departure in the executive ranks, the kind of disruption that could either break or hasten his plans. A spark ignited in him. Could he leverage this chaos to propel the change he sought? The road ahead would not be user-friendly, and he knew it would take unwavering resolve. And with that, Marcus stepped back into the bustling office, ready to navigate the intricacies of influence in an ever-shifting landscape. Marcus stepped back into the chaos of the office, intent on harnessing the energy coursing through him. The buzz of conversations and the rhythmic tapping of keyboards provided a surreal backdrop, contrasting sharply with the turmoil brewing within him. The awareness of an impending void, the sudden departure of a key executive, had shifted the ground beneath his feet. It was both an opportunity and a potential landmine. His mind raced as he considered the implications. This disruption could either pave the way for his vision or entrench the existing leadership in rigid resistance. He had witnessed fragile empires crumble before. He needed to act strategically, perhaps leveraging this chaos to solidify his presence and the narrative he had just begun to craft. As he moved through the office, perceptions filtered into his consciousness, his colleagues' voices layered with excitement and trepidation. "Did you hear about Mitchell?" Someone whispered. "He was just thrown out like yesterday's news," another replied. Their words resonated with the reality he now faced, a competitive environment filled with uncertainties that could quickly turn hostile. Would it be wise to approach the remaining executives or take a step back? Would stepping forward convey ambition or reckless opportunism? The truth hung in the air as he dismissed his initial impulse to retreat. He needed to seize this moment. He took a deep breath, reminding himself of Linda's advice. Make connections. Blending his strategic mind with his newfound confidence would be the key. He made his way to the common area, where people congregated over coffee and snacks. As he entered the fray, he focused on the people in the room, each conversation potentially ripe with insights about the leadership's mood. This wasn't just about making connections, it was about honing in on their sentiments, their fears. "Marcus!" Marianne from HR waved him over. Her voice carried a note of urgency. "Come join us. Everyone is talking about the board. They're in a frenzy." "Sure, what's the latest?" he asked, consciously maintaining a light tone, even as anxiety quivered beneath the surface. "They're discussing potential replacements. Could be a total shakeup." She shrugged, her expression betraying intrigue but also apprehension. "Think they'll be open to new strategies?" he probed, eager to gauge her sentiment. "Maybe, but who knows? Everyone's scared." Marcus recognized the perfect opportunity. "Scared of change?" he suggested, weighing each word carefully, aware of his role as potentially their voice of reassurance. Not just change, loss of control, feeling uncertain of their futures. Her response illuminated the underlying fears rooted deep within the team, fears he could connect with and channel into a powerful narrative. He needed to capture their anxieties and redirect them towards a shared vision of resilience. As he spoke, he began crafting language that spoke unmistakably to this collective uncertainty. "What if we could leverage this moment?" he proposed, lowering his voice to pull them in closer. "A change in leadership could also open a window for a fresh perspective, a collaborative approach that allows us to redefine our mission and culture." Marianne's expression shifted, hope creeping into her features. "You really think that could happen?" "Change requires courage," he replied softly but firmly. "Together, we can be the architects of that change rather than just passive observers. We need to pivot away from fear. Our experiences can be the bedrock for a new direction." His heart raced as the group engaged. They leaned in, eyes brightening with renewed possibilities. He was building a coalition, albeit from the grassroots level, one that could support his vision as it unraveled amidst the executive shifts. As the conversation flowed, he felt a rush of realization wash over him. This was more than merely selling ideas to the board. It was empowering those around him, awakening their dormant strengths and capacities to enact change. Each word solidified his emerging role as a leader amidst chaos, his confidence swelling as they began to express their own visions for the future. But just as he felt that surge of momentum, his phone buzzed, tearing him back to his reality. A single message illuminated the screen. "Meet me in the conference room, we need to talk." It was Thomas. As he read the message, uncertainty clawed at him. Was this the follow-up he needed, or did it herald a setback? The tension within him surged anew. The stakes had never felt higher, and his determination wavered only momentarily. If he was to galvanize everyone behind him, he would need to confront whatever challenge awaited him in that conference room head-on. Exiting the common area, he paused, heart racing. He was stepping into uncertainty once more, but now armed with the resolve born from both his conversation and an intense personal journey. What awaited him within those walls could shift everything he had hoped to achieve. As Marcus made his way down the corridor, a singular thought dominated his mind. The real battle was just beginning. Marcus Jenkins entered the conference room, the air thick with anticipation. The table was a stark contrast to the energy that had recently filled the office. It felt cold, heavy with unspoken words. He spotted Thomas sitting at the far end, his expression uncharacteristically serious, as if the weight of the unfolding corporate drama rested squarely on his shoulders. "Thank you for coming, Marcus," Thomas began, voice steady but tinged with urgency. "I wanted to discuss the implications of recent events and how they affect our trajectory." A moment of silence hung between them, laden with the tension of unvoiced fears. Marcus steeled himself. He was not merely there to listen but to shape the narrative. "Mitchell's departure has created a rift," Thomas continued, "and there's talk about what our next steps should be. I believe your recent engagements have positioned you favorably to take on a more prominent role in these conversations." Marcus felt a flicker of hope. This was it, the pivot he had been waiting for. "I appreciate you saying that, Thomas, but we can't just fill a leadership vacuum. We need to use this moment to reshape our company culture fundamentally." "Absolutely," Thomas nodded, his gaze sharp. "But how?" What specific changes do you envision? Taking a deep breath, Marcus launched into his vision. We have the chance to redefine our commitment to inclusivity. Let's implement workshops that focus on bias training, create mentorship programs for employees from diverse backgrounds, and establish a clear channel for feedback. Change begins at the grassroots level. Thomas's eyes narrowed thoughtfully, his fingers steepling. Those are ambitious proposals. It won't just require buy-in from the executives. We need to consider the potential pushback. Pushback is inevitable, Marcus affirmed, but change is often met with resistance. What's essential is how we communicate our objectives. If we position these initiatives as critical for our growth rather than reactive measures, I believe we can galvanize support. He paused, feeling the solidarity he had started to foster in the common area echo within himself. The entire organization is ready for this. They want to feel heard and valued. If we can weave accountability into our culture, we not only secure loyalty but also inspire innovation. The potential here is massive. There was a moment of reflection as Thomas digested Marcus's words. Your passion is commendable, he finally said, a spark of respect illuminating his tone. This could position you not only within this company, but as a voice for the industry at large. Encouraged by Thomas's response, Marcus pushed further, the fire of determination igniting within him. We can establish a committee that focuses on diversity and ethical leadership. Let's create a roadmap with clear metrics for accountability, so we measure our success not just in profit, but in community and employee satisfaction. As he laid out the specifics, Marcus felt the energy shift. Thomas's demeanor softened, a mixture of admiration and understanding in his eyes. You've clearly thought this through, Marcus. I will advocate for your proposals at the next executive meeting. Thank you, Marcus replied, a swell of gratitude filling his chest. But it's just the beginning. We need everyone on board, employees, executives, and stakeholders. This isn't a top-down approach, it's a collaborative endeavor. Indeed. Thomas agreed, his voice now reflecting hope alongside authority. But you have to lead this charge. You need to step into that role, embrace it fully. In that instant, everything crystallized for Marcus. The beginning of his transformation as a leader was dawning before him. He had wrestled with self-doubt, but now clarity emerged from the swirling chaos surrounding him. He was not merely advocating for change. He was becoming a central figure in that change. I will, Marcus vowed, the conviction thrumming through him. This is our moment. If we approach this together, we can establish a legacy that aligns with the values we preach. He felt a profound sense of purpose wash over him. This wasn't just about organizational change. It was a personal commitment to ensure that every voice was respected and valued. As they concluded their discussion, an electric current of optimism filled the room. Marcus exited the conference room, heart pounding with renewed purpose. The steps toward implementation loomed ahead, but now he felt equipped to face them, ready to stake his claim as a leader, not just for himself but for all those who had silently hoped for change. As he rejoined the bustling office environment, he realized how far he had come. The timid entrepreneur who once felt invisible was now a catalyst for transformation. He took a deep breath, absorbing the vibrancy around him. Concrete actions awaited. The team he had rallied was ready to effect change. This was the culmination of his journey, his individual transformation manifesting as leadership, a beacon guiding others toward betterment. With a confident stride, he began drafting plans for the transformative workshops, ready to disseminate his vision throughout the company. This was the moment of his realization. Marcus Jenkins was not just another executive fighting for his place. He was an architect of change poised to redefine his industry's landscape. The revolution he sought had ignited, and with it came a thrill of anticipation. One thing was clear. The legacy he would forge would ripple far beyond the confines of corporate walls, paving the way for those who dared to dream. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.